I went home for the festival with a broken lip. My childhood friend, who had always looked down on me, sneered. Did you get bitten by a dog again? Under the gaze of everyone in the room, I said, it was my boyfriend who bit me. Instantly, my childhood friend's face turned dark. On the last day of the deadline, when my mom ordered me to go home for the spring festival in advance, I arrived home in the evening. As soon as I entered the door, I saw my childhood friend David and his parents. After a moment of eye contact, David put on a mocking expression and said, Nellie, did you get bitten by a dog again? When I was 5, I insisted on kissing a dog and ended up getting bitten. I had to get 3 shots of rabies vaccine. David accompanied me to get the shots at that time, though reluctantly, but this became a laughingstock that he always used to mock me. Presumably, remembering this past event, the adults present burst into laughter. Only then did I touch my lip. The wound had formed a scab, which was even more obvious on my pale lips. Amid their laughter, I said, No, it was my boyfriend who bit me this morning. The laughter stopped abruptly under the shocked gazes of everyone. Only David's face darkened, because we had a childhood betrothal. In the silence where a pin drop could be heard, David's mom said, Emily has a boyfriend now. I replied politely, yes, he's a senior in our school. Under David's almost enraged gaze, I continued, he didn't have time to come this time. I'll arrange for him to come and have a meal with you all after the new year. David finally lost his temper and roared, eat my ass. Then he turned around and went to the balcony. David's mom glanced at me nervously and then followed him to the balcony. I shrugged infuriately, pushing my luggage into the room. Under the slightly awkward gazes of the remaining people, I could still faintly hear some arguing from the balcony. You said you'd rather die than marry Emily. So why are you going crazy now that she has a boyfriend? After David's mom finished speaking, there was a long silence before David said, Anyway, I don't agree. I lowered my eyes and smiled. 3 years ago, at a gathering of our 2 families, David's mom joked with me again and called me daughter-in-law. Unexpectedly, David blew up on the spot, accusing his mom of going too far with the joke. Then he turned around and accused me of being shameless and always following him around, asking me not to bother him anymore. David just immediately slapped David and he put all the blame on me. David and I parted unhappily. Even when filling out my college application, I chose a school in the Southwest, far away from David. I thought that in the future, David and I would only be childhood friends, but what was he doing now? By the time I changed into my home clothes, David was already sitting at the dining table. I didn't know how his mom had coaxed him. He didn't seem as angry as before during the meal. Everyone deliberately avoided the topic of what had just happened and only asked me about my studies. When the atmosphere had slightly eased, my phone suddenly rang. Glancing at the incoming call information, I pursed my lips and smiled. I'll take this call, Auntie. You all start eating first. I got up and walked outside. It was my boyfriend John on the phone. He just asked me if I had eaten. I whispered to him, Why did you bite my lip until it bled? I didn't even notice. John mumbled for a long time on the other end before squeezing out, I did it on purpose. Just as I was about to speak, there was a loud bang from behind the door. I turned my head. David's face was flushed red, full of impatience. Are you going to eat or not? If not, I'm going to do the dishes. John's voice came from the phone. Haven't you finished eating yet? How about I order you some fried chicken? Hearing John's voice, David's face turned ashen. Who is he? He asked. I looked up at him, smiled, and said slowly, He's my boyfriend. John on the phone was silent for a moment before saying, Call me tonight, waiting for you. Then the line went dead in the hallway. Only silence remained between David and me. David stared at my lips for a long time and then suddenly said, How long have you two been dating, and you've already kissed? I turned off my phone screen and put it in my pocket. Almost a year. I saw his face turn from dark to red. Why haven't I heard you mention him? I thought for a moment. David was probably referring to my WeChat moments. After falling out with him, I didn't delete him as a friend, but we basically didn't send each other messages. I rarely updated my moments, didn't change my profile picture or signature, and didn't post any messages related to John. I said, I forgot to update. As I said this, I put my phone in my pocket. David chuckled. So you don't like him that much, do you? He seemed to have let out a sigh of relief. I looked at him in confusion. Why do you say that? If you liked him, you wouldn't not mention him even once. I gently clenched my fists. No, no. I like him very much. I looked up, stared into David's eyes, trying to show him that I wasn't lying. David looked down at me, seeing that I didn't seem to be lying. A trace of unease flashed across his eyes. I didn't want to entangle with him anymore. So I lifted my feet and left. As I passed by David, he softly asked me, "How could you move on so quickly?" After being humiliated by David in front of our parents that day, I was actually quite disappointed. When we were young, we were once good friends who talked about everything. He had also sent me ambiguous signals in high school. There was a trend of reading novels in the class. One of the common pairings of male and female protagonists was childhood sweethearts. People who knew David and me well would make fun of us, because we were the standard childhood sweethearts, and David had never expressed dissatisfaction. He even accompanied me to and from school as usual, bought me warm baby stickers and fetched water for me. I thought he liked me too. But he gave me a heavy blow in front of our parents. What made me even sadder was that the next day, my deskmate asked me, "Do you know that David and Elena are together?" Elena was the recognized class beauty who had been secretly in love with David for 3 years. That David had never responded to her at the teacher appreciation dinner after the college entrance examination. Elena confessed her love to David again in front of the teachers that day. At that time, everyone was cheering, and even the teachers had smiles on their faces. David didn't agree at that moment. But someone told me that the day after David embarrassed me, they got together. I thought for a while and replied, "I know now. But I'm a bit busy. Talk to you later." I tried to divert my attention by reading, but still couldn't resist and open my WeChat moments. What came into view was the official relationship announcement post by Elena. In the photo, she and David were snuggling their heads together, looking affectionate. I didn't even dare to click to enlarge the picture. Several of my close friends came to ask me what was going on at this moment. I began to be glad that I didn't like posting in moments before. Otherwise, as David's gossip girlfriend for so many years, I might have needed to make a statement, but after a while, I still put down my phone. A chair dropped onto the page of the book in front of me. The time left for me to be sad was not much before that. I had promised David that we would stay in the coastal area together, but I had to break my promise when choosing a school. I chose a university in the Southwest. During that summer vacation, encouraged by my parents, I got my driver's license, learned to swim, and traveled to several cities. When my time was filled up, I found that I didn't have much spare time to feel sad. My mom said that David's uncle had brought David to our house several times, but they didn't see me. I was either traveling or in class. It was not until close to the start of school, when I was packing my luggage with my mom, that I saw David again. David's uncle looked at me and said, "You've tanned." I nodded with a big smile, saying that I had been to quite a few places. David didn't say a word beside him, just glancing at me from time to time. Maybe he was in a bad mood. He remained silent throughout the whole process and only took a deep look at me before leaving. I lowered my head and didn't look at him before going to bed. I opened my WeChat moments and saw Elena's update again. She said, "The new love can't beat the childhood sweetheart. What you can't get will become the white moonlight in your heart." A classmate asked her below, "What happened?" Eleanor replied, "We broke up." Seeing this, I finally understood why David had such a gloomy face during the day. So they had broken up. But Eleanor's words, "the new love can't beat the childhood sweetheart," made me confused. I didn't remember that David had any other childhood sweethearts besides me. If it were before, I would definitely have gone to David to ask for clarification, but during this vacation, I had already figured it out that in the future, David and I would at most just be friends. I wouldn't care anymore. On the day I set off for school, before boarding the plane, I turned off my phone in advance and missed the message David sent me, which said, "Why did you go to see university?" University life was very busy. I minored in a second major, and even my weekends were fully scheduled. It was not until that day when David suddenly sent me a message that I realized I hadn't thought of him for a long time. He asked me to help click on an app. I replied, "Sorry, I haven't downloaded it, my bad." The typing status on the other side showed for a long time before he sent a message saying, "It's okay." I had no intention of chatting with him, so I put down my phone and continued to do my homework. It was not until the library closed that I saw he had asked me, "When does your summer vacation start?" The sending time was 5 hours ago. I didn't reply to him. Until now. David stood in front of me, asking me why I moved on so quickly. A ridiculous thought came to my mind. But I immediately interrupted it. "I don't understand what you mean," I said. David didn't say anything more. And I went straight back to my room. On the day I returned to school, John came to pick me up at the station as soon as he saw me. He took my luggage and said, "You must be tired. I'll take you to have something delicious." While walking on the road, John's face looked a bit strange. I asked him what was wrong. He stammered for a long time and then said, "I'm really sorry for biting your lip that day. He lowered his eyes. "I just felt so insecure." Once, John and I happened to talk about our relationship experiences. I didn't hide anything and told him that I had liked David before. At that time, John said he didn't care, but the panic in his eyes was obvious to me. Just like now. He looked both round and flustered. He was worried that I would still fall for David, so I took his hand and said, "It's okay. You can make it up to me by treating me to rice noodles." My first encounter with John was actually quite wonderful that day. Because of the vacation, the library closed at noon. On my way back to the dormitory with books in my arms, a puppy suddenly jumped out from the flower bed. I looked at it for a few seconds. And then it ran over and rubbed against my leg. I squatted down and stroked its head, but then it just got so attached to me. There was a collar around the puppy's neck. So it was obviously not a stray dog. I had no choice but to sit there and wait for the puppy's owner to find it. After a while, the puppy started to whine and burrowed into my arms. I held it and gently stroked its belly, and soon it fell asleep with a whine. A few minutes later, a boy came running in a hurry. He took a look at me and the puppy in my arms, put his hands together and apologized to me, saying that this was his puppy. To express his gratitude, he added me as a friend. This boy was John. John is a senior, 2 years older than me, and is now in his first year of postgraduate study. When we first got to know each other, he often came to the library to bring me lunch or help me organize the key points for the final exams under the pretext of saying thank you. He infiltrated my life quietly. Even my friends spoke highly of John. But I'm not the kind of person who would be attracted just because of others' praise. Nor would I treat him differently just because John was good looking. After all, I had already had a bad experience with David in this regard. What made me fall for John was just a small thing. That day, John invited me to the amusement park. To be honest, this was the first time I had come to play with a boy. I had invited David to the amusement park before, but though he promised verbally, he never accompanied me even once. Until the day John took me to the amusement park. I felt a bit dazed. In the past, I probably wouldn't have thought that the first time I came to the amusement park would be with another boy. Seeing me in a daze, John waved his hand in front of me. I came back to my senses, and was about to smile at him when I accidentally bumped into a little girl in a princess dress. The ice cream in her hand dropped to the ground. Looking at the little girl's face on the verge of crying, I suddenly felt at a loss. John reacted faster than me. He immediately squatted down and comforted the little girl, saying, "Hyundata wasai. Oh, where did this little princess come from? Princesses can't cry easily. You know." John wiped away the tears that were about to fall from the little girl's eyes with a tissue. "Sister didn't mean to bump into you. Brother will buy you another ice cream. Okay?" John looked up and winked at me. I got the hint and immediately squatted down too, starting to coax the little girl. "I'm so sorry. Baby sister really didn't mean it." At this moment, John quickly ran to buy an identical ice cream. When he handed the ice cream to the little girl, she beamed with joy. Immediately John coaxed her a few more words before the little girl left. And I stood there, subconsciously waiting for John to say I was clumsy, because in the past, in such situations, David would always say that to me with impatience on his face. David always seemed to have very little patience with me, but John just smiled and gently touched my head, saying, "The little princess has left. Now, miss, if you don't hurry up, we'll miss the fireworks." He gently held my wrist and pulled me forward. On the way, he kept talking about how he had checked on show fans who a platform. perhaps, and already knew the best place to watch the fireworks and how to take better photos. I stared at him blankly and subconsciously asked, "Why aren't you mad at me?" John turned around and was also stunned, probably thinking about why I would ask such a question. After a moment, he gave me a big smile and said, "Cinderella also lost a glass slipper because of being nervous. Emily, had into my obsession. Being a little clumsy once in a while makes you even cuter after all, you always look like a serious academic god at school. And I don't get to see this side of you." Suddenly, my nose felt a bit sore. So one day, when John accompanied me to the library, although he was sitting right across from me, he still passed me a small note. On the note was written, "Will you be my girlfriend?" The signature was a tear-eyed puppy. I couldn't help but laugh out loud. I thought that at that moment, I completely got rid of the shadow David had brought me. And the person in front of me was emotionally stable and gave me enough sense of security, allowing me to fully invest in a healthy new relationship. So, I wrote yes on the note. John was always very attentive when preparing holiday surprises and gifts. He would ask about my arrangements in advance to ensure that he could plan surprise activities without causing me any trouble, from suddenly taking out a flower from his pocket during a date to having a well-planned travel itinerary for holidays. Taking advantage of this National Day holiday, he took me to a neighboring city again. John took a perfect Polaroid photo of me by the sea, which I had been longing to visit for a long time. He put that Polaroid behind his transparent foam case. He was so meticulous in everything he did that our 3-day to-night trip was very enjoyable. If it hadn't been for the unexpected guest on the way back, this happiness might have lasted much longer. Just as we were walking back to school hand in hand, my roommate called me. "Emily, your brother is at school. The dorm supervisor didn't let him into the dorm. And he's waiting for you downstairs." I was stunned. "Which brother?" "I don't know. He's tall and handsome just now." Several girls asked him for his contact information. Just then, we happened to arrive downstairs of my dormitory. I saw David in the crowd. At a glance he looked over too. Just as he was about to say hello to me, he caught sight of the hands that John and I were holding. David's eyes instantly turned red. David said he wanted to invite John and me for coffee. "Is this your boyfriend?" David asked. I said, "This is my boyfriend, John." Then I introduced David to John. "He's the elder brother from the neighbor's house, David." David's face darkened. John leaned towards me with a cup of Americano in his hand, smiling. "Brother-in-law. You have sharp eyes." David gritted his teeth. "Brother-in-law." When the atmosphere was getting a bit tense, John said, "I ordered a small cake for you in the store next door. I'll go pick it up now." With that, he left his seat. I lowered my eyes and looked at the latte art of the cappuccino. David spoke first. "When did you start drinking coffee?" "Before going to college. Although the schoolwork was heavy, David brought me a cup of tea every day so I wouldn't get sleepy. I was preparing for the final exams. I was too sleepy, so I started drinking coffee." "I thought you'd always drink tea." Sensing there was more to his words, I stirred the coffee and said, "People change." I looked up at him and asked, "What are you doing here?" His face showed displeasure. "As your neighbor's elder brother, I'm keen to see if your boyfriend is reliable." He emphasized the words "neighbor's elder brother," sounding rather grudging. While David and I were in silence, John came back with the cake. As he was unpacking it, he said to David, "Emily really likes the cheesecake and coffee from this place." John proudly placed the cake in front of me, as if showing off a precious treasure. David stared at him with a hostile look, and John subconsciously moved closer to me and leaned his head on my shoulder. He whispered to me, "Why do I feel that brother-in-law isn't satisfied with me?" Although he said it in a whisper, he deliberately made sure David could hear clearly, because David's face turned even uglier. I patted John's hand and said, "That's not true. Don't you think too much?" Under David's almost fierce gaze, I took John's hand and said, "I have to go to the library later. Thank you for the treat, Brother David." With that, I put a $10 bill on the table. Without looking at David's expression, I took John and left. On the way back, I thought about John's abnormal behavior just now. He is usually kind-hearted and would never embarrass anyone in public, but today, he repeatedly made David's face turn dark. I had a hunch that he had guessed who David was. Sure enough, John asked me, Is this the elder brother you said you had a crush on? I replied, yes, but he's in the past. John was rather clingy and said softly, I trust you. However, the uneasiness in his eyes betrayed him. I thought David had left. But the next day, John's friend called me, Emily. Come to the hospital quickly. John was beaten up. I rushed to the hospital in a hurry, only to see that on a bench, John was sitting on the left and David was on the far right. When John saw me coming, his eyes turned red, looking so pitiful. He was just about to speak when David shouted, Emily, he was smiling and hugging another girl just now. Before I could say anything, David showed me his phone screen. Indeed, it was a picture of John hugging a girl and chatting happily. David muttered aside, I told you. The guy you chose with your poor taste is unreliable. He looked unconvinced and glanced at me from time to time. I interrupted him. This is John's cousin. I know her. David was stunned. After a moment, he said, You don't have to make excuses for him. It's not like your poor judgment is something new. I'm not making excuses. John introduced his family members to me when we started dating. I looked back at David. If you say my judgment is poor, well, it's true. Otherwise, I wouldn't have liked you before. Hearing this, David was taken aback. He stammered, How can you say that? Turning around, I saw John's red-rimmed eyes, looking as if a puppy had its can of food snatched away. I lifted his face to check his injuries and said without looking up, but addressing David, You'd better go back to school early. You not only hit my boyfriend here but also made him feel very insecure. Under David's shocked gaze, I said, Don't come again in the future. David left in a daze that day. I sent John downstairs to his dormitory as usual. He was planning to take me to ride the Ferris wheel the next day because it would be a sunny day. He said that looking at the stars from the Ferris wheel would be even more beautiful. But at noon the next day, I received a call from my mom. She said David had called her, telling her that John was hugging another girl behind my back and asking her what was going on. I suddenly felt a strong sense of disgust towards David. I hated his distorting of the truth and his being unreasonable. This feeling of disgust made me distracted all day. So much so that at the moment when the Ferris wheel reached its highest point, when John tried to kiss me, I forgot to respond. When I came to my senses, I saw that under the illumination of the lights, the tears in John's eyes were shining. I wanted to explain, but John spoke first. Molly, do you have something bothering you? Let's take a few days to calm down. I'll wait for you. John was always an emotionally stable person, but he shed tears frequently in front of me. I felt deeply guilty. Although John was a bit sulky, he still sent me back downstairs to my dormitory before leaving. He lowered his eyes, looking dispirited, and said, meanly, What I give you is also what I want. I kept thinking about what John said before he left that day. On previous weekends, John and I would always be together. But on this day, John went to the laboratory alone. I rarely went to the bookstore by myself when I was checking out. I always felt that someone was watching me. I looked back and saw a girl I didn't know. She was holding a book and walked up to me out of politeness. I gave her a faint smile, but she said, I know you. I was surprised because I had never seen her before. She said, I know you from John's WeChat moments. She tapped the table. I used to chase John. Seeing my stunned expression, the girl laughed. It was just a failed pursuit. Don't be nervous. She handed me a cup of milk tea and chattered about her story with John. They were high school classmates. At that time, John had good grades and was good looking. A popular figure in school, known even to junior students. And she was the beautiful class beauty with a good temper, praised by everyone at that time. The trend was to pair people up, and the classmates always thought they should be together. So everyone was cheering them on. The girl was also attracted to John under the matchmaking of others. One day after school, she stopped John and confessed to him. She thought it was a sure thing, but John seriously rejected her. John said to her, We shouldn't date just because others think so. True love requires you to understand your own heart. At that time, she didn't understand what John meant. It was not until she met the person she truly fell in love with. She told me, when I met my boyfriend, I realized that what I felt for John was not love at all. I was just lost in other people's words and followed the crowd. wanting to be with a popular figure for the sake of face. She tilted her head and smiled. Although John rejected me at that time, he still protected my self-esteem and didn't spread the story around. Until recently, I saw you in John's WeChat moments all the time. Since John is a really nice person, I know you must be a nice person too. After the girl left, I opened John's WeChat moments. His background was a photo of us together and all his posts were visible. I slowly scrolled down before we got together. They were all John's daily life, but since last year, every post of John had my figure in it. Sometimes it was an unintentional snapshot of my side profile, and sometimes it was a picture of my sleeping face when I took a nap in the library. John's classmates in the same research group all knew me because he often told them that Emily would forget she was hungry when reading, and that he had to go to the library to bring food to his girlfriend. No wonder my roommates all praised that everyone knew Emily was the apple of John's eye. I opened my WeChat moments. Among the few posts, most were those forwarded as required by the club. And there was no sign of John. No wonder David said I didn't like John. And seeing John's pitiful look yesterday, I finally understood. I called my mom and asked, "Mom, did I never tell you about my boyfriend?" She was probably playing Maj horn. And there was a lot of noise on the other end, but my mom's words hit me hard. "When did you? You suddenly said you had a boyfriend during the spring festival. Your dad and I were shocked, sweetheart. Mom is telling you, don't bring some shady guy home. Last time David said your boyfriend was hugging another girl." I interrupted her. "That girl is my boyfriend's cousin. Don't believe David's nonsense." My mom asked me, "How does your boyfriend treat you?" "He treats me very well." She was silent for a moment and then said, "Sweetheart, Mom knows you may like someone with 8/10 of your heart. But you only show 3/10. Did you call me because you had a fight with that boy? Love needs to be expressed." "Who? You guys pay up." She hung up the phone with a snap, leaving me stunned on this end, probably because the hurt from David was too deep. I was afraid that if I fully expressed my love, the other person would become complacent and no longer cherish me, so I divided my love into parts. Like cutting a cake. Giving only a little bit at a time and never giving myself completely again. But now I realized that John had given me 10/10 of a sense of security, while I had only given him 2/10. This wasn't fair to John. That's why David's appearance this time made all of John's insecurities flare up. I thought I needed to have a talk with John. But the one who came to me before John was David. I thought he had gone back when he showed up downstairs of my dormitory. I frowned tightly. He said, "I want to talk to you again." I needed to end things with David, otherwise his endless pestering would only make John more anxious and worried. I agreed to his invitation, but quickly sent a message to John. "David invited me to dinner. I'll be back soon." I thought this was the first step I could take to give John a sense of security. David and I went to the Sichuan restaurant at the back gate. David can't eat spicy food, and I ordered a lot of spicy dishes. He looked a bit displeased. "I did eat spicy food." "Then you can order some dishes for yourself," I said irritably. Hurt flashed in his eyes. "You never talked to me like this before." In the past, because I had feelings for David, I always took more care of him. I ignored him and just said, "I haven't even settled the score with you for spreading rumors about John to my mom." David said, "You believe him just because he said she's his cousin? Do you really know his family situation? Emily, don't be deceived again." I clenched my fists. "I'm not stupid, you're not. I think you're just muddle-headed." I sighed. "David, can't you talk without belittling me?" David then realized what he had just said. His eyes dodged. "I didn't mean to. I just don't want you to be deceived. Your concern is unnecessary." David tried to grab my hand, but I quickly dodged. He asked me, "Why did you choose him? Isn't it better that we know each other so well?" I was stunned for 2 seconds, then understood the hidden meaning in his words. "Are you crazy?" "I am crazy. I've regretted it since I started dating Elena. When I was with her, I couldn't stop thinking about you. I just hated it so much when my mom and others made those jokes. That's why I lost my temper that time." Amid David's angry shouts, I finally understood Elena's WeChat moments post back then. So the childhood sweetheart and the new love can't beat the childhood sweetheart was really me. Besides being shocked, I felt even more disgusted with David if he didn't like Elena. Why did he get together with her? In high school, Elena always had a bright face and said to me, Emily, you're so beautiful and smart. I really admire you. But when it comes to pursuing David, as long as he's not dating anyone, we're in a fair competition. I often remembered her clear smile, but the relationship she had pursued for 3 years only lasted for 2 months. How innocent was Elena? David said, come back. I can give you everything he can give you. I was about to speak when suddenly the sound of playing Didishu came from the table behind us. Pass. David's face darkened. I said, David, if you really liked me, you wouldn't have made things difficult for me in front of our parents. You always only think about yourself and give me your leftover emotions. Is this what you call love? David's eyes turned red. Before he could speak, the voice from behind came again. No, he was silent for a moment and then said, anyway, I'll wait for you. Then the person behind shouted, hurry up. I'm waiting until the flowers fade. I suddenly stood up and walked to the table behind. Huddled in the seat, holding a phone with the Dudisha game on. Looking at me with a wronged face, who else could it be but John? John and I went back to the dormitory together. I asked him, have you had enough of causing trouble? John pouted. He was trying to steal my girlfriend. I couldn't help but laugh. Who said he could succeed? He said. It's written in the textbook, these guys in the chasing the wife after making mistakes scenario are likely to succeed. I stretched out my hand and asked him, what textbook? Hearing this, John blushed. After being coy for a long time, he finally handed me his phone. He opened a TXT file named Anula Beats the Childhood Sweetheart, the cult goddess's favorite. I couldn't help but burst out laughing. What kind of textbook is this? Would you dare to show this to your supervisor? He snatched the phone back. Don't do that. I still need to maintain my dignity in front of my senior brothers. In the laboratory, John seemed like a kind yet distant junior. But in fact, when he was with me, he was always like a puppy wagging its tail. Only I knew how clingy John could be. After a moment of stalemate, John said softly, I was just scared. It said in here that I should play some little tricks to make you realize how important I am to you. But I was afraid that if I went too far, you'd really leave. John hung his head, looking like he had done something wrong. Sorry. I shouldn't have eavesdropped on your conversation. I reached out to touch John's face, and then felt a warm touch on the back of my hand. It was John's tears. A wave of guilt overwhelmed me. I nestled in John's arms and said, you don't need these little tricks. I will love you anyway. John's body stiffened. I said, John, I'm really sorry for not making you feel my love. I followed John's example and changed the background of my Reach at Moments to a photo of us. I also introduced John to everyone around me. Everyone knew that John was my beloved boyfriend. I learned to express all my feelings the way John loved me. No longer ashamed to hide them once, I needed to register an account using John's phone. He generously handed it to me. After a while, someone sent a flurry of messages. The number was familiar. It was David's phone. I opened the message record. David had sent John more than a dozen photos of us from before. John replied with a photo of me sleeping in his arms. David on the other end was probably furious and cursed John harshly. John replied to him, it's not my fault that you didn't hold on to Emily. You always belittled Emily. You thought it was a way to show your affectionate love. But do you know? Emily would doubt herself because of your casual words. You always relied on your childhood sweetheart relationship, thinking that Emily couldn't leave you. But David, no one can't live without anyone, and at least with me, Emily deserves all the beautiful things in the world. David was silent for a long time and then replied, it's none of your business. I've been with her since we were kids. Our relationship is deeper than yours. John replied, if you measure love by the length of time, then you should marry the earth and you're always together, probably seizing the opportunity. John gave him another harsh blow. Goodbye, brother-in-law. You'd better give a big red envelope. David immediately sent an emoji to curse him. When I clicked on David's profile, I found that he had blocked John. I rarely posted on Moments. But on the day of my postgraduate graduation, I posted, June has not only graduation gowns but also wedding veils. The pictures attached were my graduation photos and the marriage certificate. My high school classmates all liked it, saying that I always did big things. David was the first one to like it, and the next second, his profile picture turned gray. Speaking of the proposal, there was a little bit of an amusing misunderstanding John and I. As if having a telepathic connection. Both took out rings at the amusement park where we fell in love. We stared at each other's rings for a few seconds, and then suddenly burst out laughing. So, we put on each other's rings. My parents and John's parents had a meal together. John Hess' mom was from City C, with a straightforward and bold personality. But when she saw me, she couldn't stop smiling, saying she loved girls from the south of the Yangtze River. After the meal, when we returned to the hotel, my mom hugged me. "This John is really a good guy." I smiled. "You've only met him once, how do you know?" My mom said. "You can tell from his parents. His dad always looks at his mom with love in his eyes. His mom, although a bit hot-tempered, still acts coquettish with his dad. Their harmony as a couple is genuine. A child growing up in such a family knows how to love. I can see that he has also influenced you well. And now you've learned to express your emotions." Thinking of how I had treated John poorly before, I felt like crying again just then. There was a knock on the door. I bought some sparklers, let's go play now." I opened the door, and John's bright smiling face appeared in front of me. I held his hand tightly. Fortunately, it wasn't too late. The next time I saw David was at my wedding with John. I was in the dressing room, getting ready to put on the veil. Suddenly, David appeared behind me. I was arranging my skirt, waiting for David to speak. He took out a red envelope from his pocket and handed it to me. "This is the wedding gift money." His expression was a bit expectant. "Or you could consider leaving with me now." I looked up under his burning gaze. I took the red envelope. I gently stroked my belly. "Baby, Uncle David is the first one to give you a red envelope. You have to remember him." David's eyes suddenly turned red. "You're pregnant." I nodded with a smile. "Yes. Brother David, you Ray going to be an uncle soon." He fell silent, looking dejected. After a long time, he said, "Have you thought about it? Maybe John will cheat on you in the future. Are you really ready to get married?" It was actually quite strange. I knew that John had gone to the amusement park that day to propose to me. And I didn't feel any fear of marriage according to my mom, considering how timid I grew up. She thought I would be full of anxiety and have a gloomy face before getting married. She even had prepared words to comfort me, but I just smiled and told her that I was going to propose to John. Her comforting words became useless. At this moment, before the wedding, David asked me, "Have you thought about it? Maybe you won't love him anymore later." I held the bouquet in my hands. "Brother David, you're wrong. Love isn't a continuous process. Instead, as long as it's John, I'll fall in love with him again and again." At the moment when he was willing to accompany me to the library every day during my postgraduate entrance exam preparation. At the moment when he took out a rose from his pocket, and even just at the moment when he looks at me, I'll fall in love with him all over again. Probably a healthy relationship gives people courage. And I finally said these words looking at the sneaky figure at the door. I laughed. Every day with him is a surprise Santa Claus gives me. So I'm willing to face those uncertain futures for him and enjoy our present. I was perhaps a bit unlucky that I couldn't get along perfectly with David, so we missed each other. But I was also lucky that John patiently taught me how to express my love. I placed the bouquet in David's arms. "My Santa Claus is here, Brother David. I wish you happiness and smooth sailing in the future." John, who had been eavesdropping outside the door, then showed up. His face was red as he held out his hand to me. I walked towards him. As I passed by David, I softly said, "Brother David, talk nicely to the girl you like in the future." Behind me, he left a sentence. "There won't be anyone else." I didn't look back after getting married. My mom told me that David went abroad on the day of my wedding, which made his uncle and the others extremely angry. My phone often received text messages from abroad. They were all just daily greetings and never crossed the line. David was probably still trapped in the past. But I didn't need to pay for his stubbornness. Every time I would show them to John guessed who sent them, he would always say half-ly that he didn't care. And then hug me tightly. One time, for work needs, I borrowed John's computer and accidentally found a folder on his desktop. Driven by curiosity, I clicked it open. It was full of photos and videos of John and me, but there was a video at the beginning that I had never seen. so I clicked to play it. In the video, John was holding his dog with a miserable look on his face. Ancestor. Can you complete the mission? The puppy wagged its tail. After a while, a girl appeared in the camera. It was me in jeans passing by the flower bed during my sophomore year. John patted the dog's butt, but the puppy backed away. Ancestor. It's up to you. Remember to pester that sister later. I'll open a can for you if you succeed. The puppy still wriggled its butt and refused to move. John whined for a long time and pushed the puppy forward a bit. Go on if you go, you'll have a mom in the future.